Good evening, you're watching Left, Right and Centre. I'm Nidhi Razdan. The big story tonight, India's diplomatic win at the International Court of Justice, which has stayed Kulbhushan Jadhav's execution for now. What happens next? That's what we're going to try and get to the bottom of over the next 60 minutes. Well, the judges of the International Court today unanimously ruled that Pakistan cannot execute Indian national Kulbhushan Jadhav until the court finishes hearing the proceedings in the case. The court also made it clear that the order is binding on Pakistan. The UN's highest judicial body, which had earlier provisionally stayed Jadhav's sentencing on May 9th, also instructed Pakistan to inform it of all measures taken in the implementation of the present order. Asserting its jurisdiction over the case, the court of 11 judges backed India's contention that there has been a violation of the Vienna Convention on Consular Relations, as New Delhi's request for consular access to Jadhav had been denied 16 times. The court said that Pakistan had indicated the execution would probably not take place before August this year, which means that there is a risk that an execution could take place at any moment thereafter before the court has given its final decision. It also noted the urgency of the case, since Pakistan had given no assurance that Mr. Jadhav would not be executed before the court has rendered its final decision. Mr. Jadhav has been sentenced to death by a Pakistani military court in April on charges of espionage and subversive activities.
Pakistan shall take all measures at its disposal to ensure that Mr. Jadhav is not executed pending the final decision in these proceedings, and shall inform the court of all the measures taken in implementation of the present order. Unanimously decides that until the court has given its final decision, it shall remain seized of the matters which form the subject matter of this order. At this stage, the existence between the parties of a dispute that is capable of falling within the provisions of the Vienna Convention, the court considers that the alleged failure by Pakistan to provide the requisite consular notifications with regard to the arrest and detention of Mr. Jadhav, as well as the alleged failure to allow communication and provide access to him, appear to be capable of falling within the scope of the Vienna Convention. Therefore, the court considers that there is no sufficient basis to conclude at this stage that the 2008 agreement prevents it from exercising its jurisdiction under Article 1 of the optional protocol.
It was a packed courtroom and a keenly awaited judgment. For India, a diplomatic win and a life of an Indian national saved for now. The final court order is now awaited. This is Maheshwari Altar for NDTV, The Hague.
Well, as soon as the order came in, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi expressed satisfaction. He spoke to External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj, who described the verdict as a great relief.
Pakistan shall take all measures at its disposal to ensure that Mr. Jadhav is not executed.
Within minutes of India's big diplomatic win at the International Court of Justice, the Prime Minister spoke to Foreign Minister Sushma Swaraj, thanking her team for their efforts.
This is a matter of great relief, and I'm sure every Indian is relieved. The External Affairs Minister had assured the Parliament. Today, you would have seen that External Affairs Minister has once again has repeated that assurance.
It's a big day for India also. It's a big victory for India and a big setback for Pakistan. I would like to compliment my colleague, Srimati Sushma Swaraj, for the initiative she has taken. I also would like to compliment Sri Harish Salve for standing on behalf of the country and then effectively arguing this case.
The stand of the Indian government has been vindicated. Although it is provisional today, it's not a final decision, but it's a big step towards a final decision.
While Jadhav's execution has been stayed, the question is what happens to India's repeated requests for consular access?
What course the matter will take, how the court will conduct its hearing, I think it's best not to go into those things at this stage. The court is seized of the matter. कॉन्सुलर एक्सेस की तो हमने 16 बार उनसे गुजारिश करी हुई है, डिमांड करी हुई है, मांग करी हुई है। अगर वो चाहते हैं तो कभी भी दे सकते हैं कॉन्सुलर एक्सेस। None of those requests has been withdrawn.
So what will the court have to look at now? India's plea asked the court to declare that the sentence of the Pakistani military court was in brazen defiance of the Vienna Convention, to direct Pakistan to take steps to annul the military court's decision, and that if Pakistan is unable to annul that decision, then the World Court should declare the decision illegal and direct Jadhav's release. While today's developments are a big diplomatic and legal victory for India, the fact is that New Delhi is also concerned about the fate of Kulbhushan Jadhav. They still don't know how he is, where he's being kept and what condition he's in. As for the case itself, it could take months and even years for the international court to arrive at a conclusion. What happens until then is anyone's guess. In New Delhi, Nidhi Razdan for NDTV. Well, there are some initial reactions we're getting from Islamabad to this story. The Foreign Office spokesperson spoke a little while earlier, Nafeez Zakaria, saying that India was trying to hide its real face by taking Jadhav's case to the International Court. But Pakistan's Attorney General has issued a statement a little while ago saying basically that the court has asked for the status quo to be maintained, that the court underscored that these are provisional measures and that they are not prejudicial to the final determination and the merits and jurisdiction of the case. So what Pakistan is trying to say here is that this is very much part of the process. They're calling this a procedural process and something that will not determine the final outcome of the case. Well, Jyoti Malhotra, consulting editor of the Indian Express, back with us on this big story tonight. So is Ambassador K.C. Singh. Mr. Soli Sorabji, the former Attorney General of India, is with us, and Sambit Patra of the BJP. Mr. Sorabji, sir, if I could ask you first, after today, if you could explain to us what happens next as far as this case is concerned, and how strong you believe that India's case is, given that, you know, we're essentially asking for the military court sentence to be thrown out.
Well, that's on the merits, finally. But the order clearly shows one thing, that India's application before the court is of substance. It has merit. That's why the court entertained it seriously. Besides, the court asked the Pakistan government whether it would give an assurance that Jadhav won't be executed. But for some peculiar reason, the Pakistan government refused to give that assurance. That, on the contrary, shows that the Pakistan government would like to execute Jadhav before the case is over and render the whole thing infructuous. Having regard to all these circumstances, the court has passed this order, which I think is on good juridical principles, and it's very fair and equitable.
Mr. Sorabji, the court today made it clear that this is an order that is binding on Pakistan, it's binding on the parties involved. However, what if Pakistan were not to abide by this order for some reason? What happens then?
Nidhi, that's hypothetical. I don't think Pakistan or any responsible government or responsible state would flout the order of the International Court of Justice. I don't think that would happen. If it does, Pakistan will damn itself more.
Well, I hope you're right. And Ambassador K.C. Singh, I'll bring you in on that. That, as Mr. Sorabji said, a responsible state would not flout the orders of the International Court. But we've seen a so-called responsible state like the United States doing that in the past more than once. Even when Nicaragua, took them to the UN Security Council, against that, they used their veto powers and basically ensured that their case was crushed. Do you see a situation where the Pakistanis could defy this even now?
Look, in case of US, there were 3 cases. One was Nicaragua, one was Germany, and the last one was Mexico. Mexico case was 2003, which is the latest one. US did accept the judgment. President Bush asked for the judgment to be implemented, but they ran into a problem because the Supreme Court of US said we can't compel states to review their judgments. So that is where it stood. But thereafter, US withdrew from the optional protocol, but they didn't defy them. But International Court of Justice is one of the arms of the UN. You defy them, technically, it can be reported to the Security Council. Now, there you can veto it. That's a different matter. But there is, look at the moral odium which goes with it. that you want to defy that, and that's why Pakistan is there today. But in any case, today, what has happened today should be seen as a first step. We managed to get the order so that Jadhav is not hanged, not till the sentence is not executed, till at least the final judgment comes in this case. And secondly, we'll have to now be prepared for substantive arguments. Because even on the question of whether bilateral agreement in any way constricts the Vienna Convention, the court simply said that whether it modifies or supplements the convention doesn't need to be decided at this stage, which means it will be decided at a subsequent stage. Then Pakistan has created a further complication, which the spokesman was taking up today after the judgment. They said they went in March and they modified their acceptance of the Vienna Convention by saying that they will not accept it for national security. Now the International Court will have to look at it. That's too broad. I don't think any other country carries that broad a thing. They might as well withdraw from the convention because they can literally put anything under it. So now the arguments will come on this. But we are on a good wicket at least. Like any case, in any court, admission is half the work done. Because at least they're willing to look at the merits of the case.
I think that's very important, and I'd just like to go across to Mr. Ashraf Jahangir Qazi, the spokesperson of Pakistan's Tehreek-e-Insaf party and someone who, of course, has served in senior diplomatic positions for Pakistan as envoy to the US and the UN. Mr. Qazi, would you agree with Ambassador K.C. Singh here that the very fact that this matter has been admitted, that it is being taken up and is being heard by the International Court, is in itself half the job done for India? Because certainly Pakistan would not have liked to see it even get this far.
I don't formally represent the government of Pakistan, and I'm a retired Pakistani citizen. My view, however, is that it is in Pakistan's interest to follow whatever decisions have been arrived at by the ICJ, the International Court of Justice. Although this is a preliminary finding, it needs to be respected. And of course that the substantial arguments are going to be presented, and whatever the final verdict is, it is always in Pakistan's interest, whether we find it pleasant or unpleasant, convenient or inconvenient, to abide by it, because in the long time that is in Pakistan's interest, and I imagine that is exactly what we will do. There are, of course, high feelings with regard to this issue because there is a narrative with regard to him. India has a counter narrative. They're likely to be presented before the ICJ in their substantive arguments, and let's await the final outcome.
It's very important that you're saying that, Mr. Qazi, because you're saying very clearly that you feel it's in Pakistan's interest to abide by this and fight this out in court. And I think from the Indian point of view also, here it's also being looked at through the civil-military relationship, through that prism, that the prism of the civil-military relationship in Pakistan. And you know how that would possibly play out in this. I think there's a sense here that the fact that this so-called court-martial happened was also a message by the Pakistani military to Nawaz Sharif, who I think has been attempting to have some kind of a good relationship with India, but keeps getting held back by his generals. If you could shed some light on that, how could we look at this and the possible impact on that civil-military relationship today?
Well, before we go into any civil-military relationship in Pakistan, I just want to sort of make a further comment with regard to abiding by whatever international law, and international law as enunciated by the highest court in the world, the ICJ, is an obligation for everyone, including Pakistan. I would also say such pronouncements, when they come from the Security Council in the form of resolutions, are similarly obligatory to accept and to have your policy in accordance with them. I'm referring to Kashmir. Now that takes us into a separate conversation. So both countries do need to respect international law in all its aspects. With regard to this particular case, all the points of view that you have and all the points of view that we have, including what you just said, all of that can be presented to the ICJ in the most substantive part of its hearing of the case. I'm not a lawyer. I can't go into the technicalities. There are maybe some aspects in which the court may feel its own jurisdiction doesn't extend to that, or it may not be. I am not an international lawyer, so I would not presume to have an opinion on such technicalities.
But sir, can I ask you, before I move to the rest of the panel, that as a former diplomat yourself, do you believe that Pakistan handled this case in the best way that it could? The fact that consular access has been repeatedly denied to Mr. Jadhav 16 times until now, and today, of course, the court didn't say anything on the issue of consular access, but India said that that request remains with Pakistan, and we would hope that at some point that they would grant that access.
Nidhi, the court did. Sorry, Nidhi, the court did say that terrorism and the other charge that Pakistan is leveling has no place in the Vienna Convention.
That's right, but it didn't direct Pakistan to grant consular access, is what I meant. I just wanted to ask Mr. Qazi, as a former diplomat, whether you feel that Pakistan has handled this in the best way.
Well, I'm not going to make a judgment because I'm not competent to do so, but I've already said that it is in Pakistan's interest to abide by the verdicts or pronouncements or directives of such organizations, and if that includes providing access, which we haven't done as yet, we need to look at it in that particular context. I'm not competent to say anything more, but whatever I know, I feel we should not put ourselves on the wrong side of international judicial forums of such stature.
So you believe that Pakistan, I mean, in your experience as a diplomat, you feel it would be right to grant consular access even now?
I feel I've said what I need to say on the subject.
All right, I understand that. Mr. Jaydev Ranade, who's been a former additional secretary with the RNAW, is here in the studio with us as well. Your thoughts on this, Mr. Ranade? How do you see this playing out from here? We've seen a big sort of relief today, but there's still a long way to go.
Absolutely. There are a lot of arguments that will be made by Pakistan and by us. But without going into the legal aspect, let me just clarify, or rather mention two things. One, the fact that our application was accepted and the International Court gave its decision today, at least the preliminary decision, to an extent, it does put Pakistan's claim that Jadhav was arrested into doubt. I think that's come out quite clearly. Secondly, there was a more than a suggestion, there was an almost, I mean, I won't say direction, but there was a comment by the court that consular access should be given and also consular assistance. And I think both these things are what we were asking for. So I think it's a positive move. Now, of course, what Pakistan will do is another question, and whether they will actually go ahead and grant this access or come out with something else and delay the entire issue, we have to see. Pakistan's own track record hasn't been too good. But I agree with what the Pakistan diplomat said, that had Pakistan given consular access in the first place, their case could have been strengthened. But I think there's a big question mark on that now.
Do you think that Kulbhushan Jadhav is all right?
Well, I would say that he's alive, but
what condition he's in?
What condition he's in is, I think, a big question mark, and that could be one of the reasons why they haven't allowed us to meet him and see him.
That, and that's something actually that did stand out even in the Ministry of External Affairs briefing today, where Sambit, there was concern again. The fact is, for instance, India doesn't know what is the status of his appeal, whether he's been able to appeal against this measure, this sentence against him, what his condition is, where he is, and that continues to be a mystery for India. But Sambit, I just want to look ahead for a moment. Does this ruling also give India some breathing space and Pakistan some breathing space to perhaps look at some way to find a compromise, maybe a prisoner swap? I know that's not something you can say on record on television, but there has to be some back channel that needs to now be ignited to see how we can bring him back. And the legal route may not work, or it may just take too long.
No, Nidhi, categorically, as far as this particular question of yours is concerned, I would not be able to answer, because I presently can answer about the situation that is a present development, that is the legality on the floor of the International Court of Justice. How rest of the things are going to proceed, I cannot shed any light on that. But the important issue today is, well, we have won the first step. what was called by the Ministry of External Affairs as the effective first step in the right direction. Secondly, and very importantly, there were three important areas which were contested by Harish Salveji in the International Court of Justice. The first area being urgency of this case. And in fact, we rightly proved that this is a very grave situation and it's a matter of great urgency. The court conceded that, well, yes, this is a matter of great urgency. And remember, KCG was also there, Jyoti was also there last time we were debating, and this issue had cropped up, that Pakistan had said that we would be granting you 150 days of clemency, 60 days and 90 days, 60 days for the army chief and 90 days for the president. So what would the court say now? But the court said we do not take this as an assurance. So the issue is, we think this is absolutely important, that urgency is a clause. The second part on which we were debating there on the floor of the court was jurisdictional issue. And remember, in the last debate, we had come up with the bilateral 2008 treaty also. The court put that aside, saying that no, the 2008 does not hold binding in this, though Mr. Casey is pointing out that that would be discussed in the future. But since it is not even registered with the United Nations, so naturally I don't think it would be of much matter in the future. And thirdly, and very importantly, whether there was any kind of violation of Vienna Convention, Article 36, Para 1, and the court said, well, yes, there were violations. Consular access were not given. Rights of the citizen, that is Mr. Kulbhushan Jadhav, and right of a nation, India, in fact, both were violated. So I believe on all the three counts we have won. But the bigger issue is, Nidhi, if you would look into this whole thing, right from the day it began in the International Court of Justice, that is 8th May 2017, this is in a slight way the third victory. The first victory is, despite the fact that we did not have the
sequence of events, Sambit, but I think it's also important to ask, and I understand your constraints. You know, as a BJP spokesperson, you can't come on TV and say, yes, you know, we're going to ignite a back channel that will get you into big trouble. But let me ask Jyoti that question. Two things, Jyoti. One is what I asked Mr. Qazi, and I understand that he can't answer this directly either. That in a sense, would Nawaz Sharif be relieved that this verdict has come today because of his tussle with the military?
I think first of all what Mr. Qazi said was very important, which is that Pakistan must abide by the decision of the International Court of Justice. I think that was really interesting, considering his own government. We've seen that that the official statements have been less than charitable, and now they're going to go to the ICJ and show proof within quotes of Jadhav's alleged subversive activities. The court has already said that it has nothing to do with it. So for Mr. Qazi, who's been a High Commissioner to India, if you remember during the Agra talks, for him to say that that Pakistan must abide by the ICJ is an important fact. Now, he didn't answer your question as to whether Nawaz Sharif would be strengthened by this move, but I think he would be, because we know that this Pakistan military court, which allegedly sort of tried Jadhav, had no business in trying a foreigner. The Pakistan military court can do what it likes with its own citizens.
But not with others.
But it cannot try a foreigner. And in this case, unfortunately for them, Kulbhushan Jadhav is an Indian citizen and therefore he is foreign to Pakistan. So that point would, I imagine, and the ICJ's verdict is a slap in the face of the Pakistan military court. So I think if India pushes this point both at the ICJ and I'm not sure what they plan to do bilaterally, I don't think they're going to go down that route. Although I would imagine that if there could be perhaps a prisoner swap or whatever it is, but that's up to the government of India. But as to your Nawaz Sharif question, I think Nawaz Sharif, who's so weakened today after the Panama Papers, after the on the Kulbhushan Jadhav case itself, and he has repeatedly said that he wants better relations with India. You know, Nidhi, that at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit in Kazakhstan, in Astana, in June, both Prime Minister Modi as well as Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif will be present. Now, it's anybody's guess that they are going to sort of do salam dua to each other. I think they will. And now that India has been strengthened, the Prime Minister of India, Prime Minister Modi, has been hugely strengthened by this victory at the ICJ.